Amara had always believed in love, the kind that held you through thick and thin. She had grown up hearing stories of unshakable bonds, of two souls intertwining and overcoming obstacles together. When she met Daniel, it felt like fate. He was kind, driven, and had an ambition that matched hers. But his world was different. He had nothing, no money, no stable job, and no family support. Yet, Amara saw potential in him. She loved him not for his present, but for the man she believed he could become. They married quickly, swept away by the romance of it all. Amara worked hard to support them both, taking on 2 jobs while Daniel tried to get his footing. They lived in a small, modest apartment, where love was the only thing that seemed to keep them afloat. Little did Amara know, the journey she had embarked on with Daniel would soon change their lives in ways she could never have predicted. For years, they struggled. Daniel's dreams were big, but they were always just out of reach. Amara supported him every step of the way, never once doubting that he would succeed. She believed in him, even when the world around them doubted. And then, after years of setbacks, a breakthrough finally came. Daniel landed a small contract that would allow him to start his own business. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark hope in both of them. The small office, a single desk and a few chairs, was where it all began. Amara still worked her 2 jobs, but now, she saw the spark of determination in Daniel's eyes. He was finally on his way. Amara didn't realize it then, but this moment would mark the beginning of a life she had never imagined. Success was within their grasp, but it came with a price she was yet to understand. As Daniel's business grew, so did the demands on his time. He spent more and more hours in the office, often coming home late, exhausted, and distracted. Amara's heart ached as she watched him change. The man she had married was still there, but the constant pressure to succeed began to wear him down. The long nights and stress took a toll on their relationship. Amara, ever supportive, tried to keep everything together. She juggled her jobs, kept the house running, and waited for the day when their lives would finally be better. Yet, with each passing day, she felt more and more isolated. She missed the quiet evenings when they'd talk about their hopes and dreams. Now, their conversations were about work, numbers, and deadlines. She could see how driven Daniel had become, but she also saw how much of himself he was losing in the process. Daniel's business continued to grow, but with success came new challenges. He had to make difficult decisions, sometimes choosing profit over personal connections. As he climbed higher, the people around him began to change. Old friends became distant, replaced by new, ambitious faces. Amara began to feel like an outsider in her own marriage. She still believed in him, but the man who had once shared his dreams with her was now consumed by his own ambitions. The wealth and success they had worked for came at a cost, emotional distance and a growing tension between them. Amara started to wonder, was it all worth it? One evening, after another long day of work, Amara waited for Daniel to come home. When he finally arrived, she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but also a new kind of emptiness. He had changed. She barely recognized the man who once looked at her with so much love and hope. Over dinner, they talked, really talked, for the first time in months. Daniel admitted that the pressure of his success was overwhelming. He had grown distant from everything he had once cared about, including her. Amara felt a wave of sadness wash over her. She had always supported him, but now, she realized that the price of his success was more than she had bargained for. Amara spent the next few months wrestling with her emotions. She loved Daniel with all her heart, but she couldn't ignore the growing emptiness in their relationship. She missed the connection they once shared, the shared dreams, and the quiet nights spent in each other's arms. She started questioning if they could ever go back to the way things were. Would Daniel's ambition continue to pull them apart? Could they rebuild their love amidst the wealth and success they had gained? But despite her doubts, Amara knew one thing for certain: she could never give up on him. She had stood by him when he had nothing, and she would continue to stand by him, even if the road ahead was uncertain. Little did Amara know, the journey ahead would take them to places they could never have imagined. As the months passed, Daniel's success only continued to grow. His business flourished beyond anything they had imagined. They moved into a luxurious house, traded their old car for a brand new one, and began attending high society events. From the outside, their life seemed perfect. Amara had everything she had ever dreamed of, except Daniel. The man who had once been her partner in all things was now a shadow of his former self. The sparkle in his eyes had faded, replaced by a cold, calculating look. He was constantly surrounded by business associates and influential people, while Amara, still adjusting to her new life, felt more alone than ever. Her heart broke as she watched Daniel slip further away from her. She had never imagined that wealth could be so isolating. Every day, she tried to convince herself that it was all worth it, that the sacrifices she had made had led to a life of comfort and security. But deep down, she felt the growing emptiness between them. One afternoon, while browsing through old photographs, Amara came across a picture of her and Daniel from their early days. They were so happy, full of dreams, with no worries about the future. She stared at the photo for a long time, and it hit her like a wave. She had lost herself in the process. She had poured everything into Daniel's success, but in doing so, she had neglected her own needs and desires. Determined to find herself again, Amara made a decision. She would take a break from her routine, from constantly supporting Daniel, and focus on rediscovering who she was. She enrolled in a few classes, started spending more time with friends, and began to focus on her own personal growth. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of happiness that wasn't tied to Daniel's success. But even as she took these steps, she couldn't ignore the pain of the distance between them. She couldn't help but wonder, had she lost Daniel forever? Despite her efforts to regain her own sense of self, Amara could not escape the reality of her marriage. Daniel's rise to success had become all-consuming, and she felt more like a bystander in her own life. She longed for the intimate moments they used to share, but those moments had become rare and fleeting. One evening, they attended a gala for Daniel's company. As Amara stood by his side, surrounded by his new colleagues and friends, she realized how much had changed. Daniel no longer looked at her the way he once had. His attention was divided between the people around him and the business opportunities at hand. It was as if she were invisible. As the night wore on, Amara found herself alone, watching Daniel from a distance. She thought about everything they had been through, the love, the struggles, the dreams they had built together. And for the first time, she questioned if their marriage could survive this new life. Was their love strong enough to withstand the distance that had grown between them? After the gala, Amara decided to confront Daniel. She couldn't keep living in this limbo, constantly wondering if they could find their way back to each other. That night, she waited for him to return home. When he walked through the door, she didn't waste time. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice trembling with emotion. "I feel like I'm losing you. I don't know who you are anymore. We've built this life together, but now, it feels like I'm invisible to you." Daniel stood frozen for a moment, clearly taken aback. He had always known that his work had taken a toll on their relationship, but hearing Amara's words hit him harder than he expected. He looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long while, he saw the pain in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Amara," he whispered, his voice filled with regret. "I've been so focused on everything else that I've lost sight of what matters most. You." It was the first time in years that Daniel had truly acknowledged the emotional cost of his success. For a moment, there was a glimmer of hope in Amara's heart. Maybe, just maybe, they could still rebuild what they had lost. The next few weeks were a period of reflection and change. Daniel realized that his pursuit of success had cost him not only his marriage but also the happiness he once had. He made an effort to spend more time with Amara, to listen to her, to reconnect with her on a deeper level. It wasn't easy, and there were many hard conversations along the way, but they both knew that they couldn't let go of each other just because life had gotten complicated. Together, They made a pact to find balance, a balance between work, ambition, and love. Daniel started delegating more responsibilities at work and focused on prioritizing their relationship. They took weekend trips, reconnected with old friends, and made time for the simple things that had once brought them so much joy. But the road wasn't without its challenges. There were days when the pressure of Daniel's business would threaten to pull him back into his old habits. But each time, Amara reminded him of the promise they had made, to never let go of what truly mattered. As Daniel's business continued to flourish, so did the weight of their newfound wealth. They were no longer struggling, but Amara realized that money came with its own set of complications. The more successful they became, the more people seemed to want a piece of their life. Friends and family began to look at them differently, and Amara struggled to navigate the new dynamics of their relationships. Despite the external luxuries, Amara felt a deep sadness within her. She had everything she had ever wanted, yet the cost of it all was a sense of loneliness and a growing realization that wealth was not the answer to happiness. She had always dreamed of a life of love and stability, but now she was learning that the pursuit of success could come at a much higher price than she had ever imagined. The journey was far from over, and Amara was beginning to understand that while they had achieved unimaginable wealth, the real challenge lay in finding happiness amid the complexities of their new life. Years had passed since Amara and Daniel had faced their lowest point. Their marriage, once on the brink of collapse, had been rebuilt with patience, love, and a shared commitment to each other. They had faced the trials of ambition, wealth, and isolation, but through it all, they learned the most important lesson of all: true success is not measured by wealth, but by the depth of the connections we nurture and the love we give and receive. Daniel's business had continued to thrive, but it was no longer the all-consuming force it once was. He had learned the value of balance, of setting boundaries between work and personal life. Amara, too, had rediscovered her own passions, pursuing her own career and dreams. They had both grown, individually and together, finding a harmony that was not built on money or status, but on mutual respect, understanding, and the recognition of what truly mattered. One quiet afternoon, sitting on their balcony overlooking the city they had once struggled to navigate, Amara and Daniel reflected on their journey. They had built a life beyond their wildest dreams, but it wasn't the luxury, the cars, or the fame that filled their hearts. It was the bond they had cultivated over time, through hard work, sacrifice, and love. "I used to think success was all about making it to the top," Daniel said, his voice calm and contemplative. "But now, I know it's about who you have beside you when you get there. You were always there for me, Amara. You believed in me when no one else did. And I didn't even realize how much I was losing in the process." Amara smiled, her heart full. "We both learned that the hard way. But we made it through, together. That's what matters." And so, as the sun set on their lives, they knew that the future held new challenges, but they were no longer afraid. They had everything they needed, a love that had withstood the test of time and the wisdom to know that no amount of wealth could replace the happiness found in each other's arms. The lesson they had learned was simple yet profound: wealth is fleeting, but love and connection are timeless. And that was the true measure of success. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more beautiful story.